Welcome to Aging on the Suncoast. I'm your host, Jason Martino. Hurricane season started June 1st and lasts through November 30th. While we prepare for all potential hazards, it's extremely important that we spend some time preparing for both of our county's biggest threat, a hurricane. In September of 2017, both Pinellas and Pasco dodged the massive Hurricane Irma. A shift to our east allowed for our area to experience tropical force winds and rain. Because of our luck, we can never let complacency get in the way of planning. This is especially true for the senior population that resides in either of these two counties. While many in our everyday community are vulnerable, seniors are far more vulnerable after a disaster such as a hurricane. To assist our viewers take planning seriously, we've invited Mary Burrell, the Outreach and Education Coordinator with Pinellas County Emergency Management, and Laura Wilcoxon, the Assistant Director with the Pasco County Division of Emergency Management. Today, our guests will help shed light on important senior preparedness information. Mary, Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So we had a busy year in 2017, and in particular, we had a pretty busy section during September. And Irma, the width of the state, came from the south and came up, and then it just did a little deviation to the right when we got towards Tampa Bay area, and we really got spared. And so a lot of our show today is going to be talking about the preparation for that storm and how people can continue to prepare for that, but especially for seniors. So Mary, where does a senior start to think about preparedness?
Okay, well, preparedness really just comes down to 3 steps. It's not that complicated, it just takes a little investment of time. So number 1 is connecting to information, knowing where you're going to get your information and sharing with others your emergency information. The second thing is assessing your risk. So know your evacuation zone, your flood risk, and wind, and how that affects your structure. Yeah. And then make that plan, get your lists, and go out and get it and make those preparations.
Yep, making a plan. And should they be the only ones to know about their plan, or should a plan be voiced to others that are also concerned about that person?
The different people in your life, your caregivers, if you have grandchildren, schools, all these people, you need to share the different plans because they need to jive. Yeah. So you need to figure that out now so when the time comes, you know exactly what you're doing and what they're doing.
Yeah, good idea. Laura, Mary was talking about finding out their evacuation level or their zone or like that. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? How would one do that?
Well, there's many different tools that people can look up their zone. One is the 2018 Disaster Guide. Both Pinellas and Pasco County has one that will be available at fire stations. They'll be available at libraries, many other government buildings that residents can go to. They can also check online. We have a wonderful app in Pasco County called the My Pasco app that will have their zone. Our county website will have it. And then they can always call in the customer service numbers.
Yeah. Plans. I want to go back to plans a little bit as well, because on our show today we're going to be talking about seniors are diverse in Pinellas and Pasco County. They comprise in Pinellas County about 31 to 32%, and in Pasco about the same percentage as well. But not every senior lives in the community in an apartment or a standalone house. Many of our seniors reside in skilled nursing facilities or assisted living facilities. And I know, just because I work pretty closely with you guys, that those skilled nursing facilities and assisted living facilities, they have to have plans. Mm-hmm. Is it wise for a resident residing in those two types of institutions to understand those plans?
Absolutely. Ask them what their plan is and make sure that your family knows, or your social network, your friends, your family, know what that plan is. And if it's to evacuate you, where are they going to evacuate you to?
Yeah. Yeah,
and you want to have that emergency information as well. How are you going to be able to keep in touch with them? And you may want to, as your family and friends may want to evacuate with you. You have to arrange that too with the facility.
Yeah, and I'd like to say it's as simple as the institution would express what that plan is to their residents, but I don't think that happens 100% of the time. So it's really up to that person that's residing there to ask good questions to understand that.
Right, and it's important to start planning early. So ask for that plan while it's now blue skies. Don't wait until it's a disaster to be calling to find out what is your plan and what are you going to be doing.
Excellent point. So for the population that lives in the community, and I guess when I think about a community in a neighborhood or an apartment complex or something like that, and let's say that they live in a non-evacuation level, what types of things do they need to be preparing for if they live in that type of situation?
Well, if you're living in a non-evacuation zone, you have to decide if you're going to stay there anyway during a storm. If you do stay in your home, make sure that you can mitigate. You can cover your doors, your windows, strengthen your garage doors, your gabled roof. Make sure that you can make that home storm ready. And then you have to get the supplies in, of course, that you can survive the storm. And then you have to survive that week afterwards as well.
Yeah.
So think about the things you're going to need for that.
And we hear the word survival kit a whole lot. The guides, the great guides that are
Right.
Published in Pinellas and Pasco County, they have great examples of what to have in either your stay-at-home kit or your takeaway kit. Can we get some examples of what seniors should be thinking about in their survival kit?
Absolutely. You want to have at least 72 hours of food, of water. We recommend 1 gallon of water per day, but it doesn't have to be in the gallon jugs. A lot of seniors might not have the strength to be able to hold those gallon jugs, so it could be in the smaller bottles if that needs be. If you have a can opener, make sure it's a can opener that's a manual one, but they make them in different types of grip strengths to make sure that you are able to use it. And you also don't have to spend hundreds of dollars to go out and buy things. A lot of times residents will have things that they need already on hand. And especially make sure that you have your prescription medications as well as any type of important documentations, ID, insurance policies, things like that.
I'm so glad you brought up the point about not overthinking what you currently have in your own home. A lot of times when I'll do presentations in a community and I'm talking about preparedness and this and that too, I'll open it up with the fact that the major media outlets will say, okay, hurricane season is here, you need to go and you need to go get all this stuff. And there's a certain fear that's kind of instilled in the person that's really viewing this type of message that's coming out. And a lot of our folks that live in both Pasco and Pinellas County, they're very low income. So what I generally try to tell them is to piecemeal, every time they go to the grocery store, maybe buy 1 canned good or something like that. But also, just like you said, Laura, to really take into consideration what they currently have in their cupboards.
Right.
And I'm a good example of that. Sometimes I'll go out and I'll buy a whole bunch of different things and I won't eat it. So it'll sit there for a long time because maybe it sounded good at that moment, but it didn't really later on in the night when I was going to toilet.
But it will after 3 days of not having power. A lot of this is really taking the time to get organized, getting your emergency numbers together. We have phone books, we have phones, we don't have it all in one place.
Yeah.
So it's getting that organized. Same thing what you're talking about, going around your house. What do I have? How many of these boxes can I check, with what I have already? And with the water, you don't have to buy water. you can save your jugs, your water your milk jugs, your soda bottles. Just put them somewhere when a storm is coming. Fill those up.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be the chore that some people perceive it as. It can be really easy for a lot of folks.
Right. As long as you're doing it now.
And if you can rely on your social network and you can kind of break it up among your community, it can make it a lot easier too.
Yep.
My parents are seniors. They had to evacuate. They're on the east coast of Florida, and they make it with their friends. So some of them they each have their own personal kit, the broader scope. One person is in charge of water. Another group is in charge of other additional canned goods. So it expands the resources that they have because they make it a social event.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about that. And that's a great point because you hear the term host home a little bit. So going into the another topic for those that live in a low-lying area or an evacuation zone, what types of things do they need to be thinking about? Mary, can you shed a little light on it?
Well, there's different options if you're going to need to evacuate. And first off, make sure you know your evacuation zone. Write it down. And then when the evacuation order is given, listen carefully and make sure you are the one in that order. And you may not have to evacuate. If you're, with Irma, we ended up calling an A and a B. So people in CDE did not have to evacuate, and many did. Yeah. So knowing that, for sure.
It could be safer for you to stay at home than it is to get on the roadway.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
You're right.
But then you have a host home that you can go to, family and friend that's not in an evacuation area. That's our best bet. That's what we recommend people do.
Right, and you don't have to evacuate hundreds of miles. It might only be 10 to 15 minutes away versus all the way out of a county. The idea is that you're getting away from a flood hazard or storm surge and that you're able to be in a safe structure that's wind mitigated.
Yeah, and you make great points. You don't have to go real far away. I made that mistake during Irma, and it was a challenge for me getting back into my neighborhood so I can report to work and do all things. And I learned a great lesson from that. Low-lying areas, mobile home parks, I mean, they're obviously a high priority in Pinellas and especially in Pasco County too, huh? But you all offer options, and so if that person did choose to leave, they have an option. They can either go to stay with friends, which is going to be a heck of a lot more comfortable because they're going to have some camaraderie and maybe some comfort items there to keep them resilient through the storm. But then you all offer shelters too, right?
We do.
That's right. Yeah. So we do have, it really should be a last resort. I mean, check out your other options first. Try to find somebody that you can go to as a host home. But if you need the shelter, we do have public shelters, yes. And we also have free transportation. Once an evacuation is ordered, our PSTA buses, our public transportation, will bring people to a shelter for free. So, you hop on a bus, you get to a shelter, and you'll be safe if you have no other option. But it is a lifeboat, not a cruise ship.
For sure.
Yes. Absolutely. So in thinking of sheltering, you only get about the size of a standard doorway is about the space that you are receiving at a general shelter. Yeah. For our special needs population, it's very important that they realize that registering for special needs is not a reservation for a spot at the shelter. Registering only helps us as a county make sure that we have resources that on hand to help that population. Yeah.
So let's talk about special needs. Thanks for raising that. Because you offer general evacuation shelters and then you offer special needs. Can you elaborate a little bit on what special needs shelters are and maybe what to expect?
Right. Special needs is for those that are medically dependent on electricity, or they have other needs such as extra help because they have mental, like dementia issue, that they need a little extra care, that they can bring a caregiver with them. We can have extra resources on hand like oxygen if somebody is oxygen dependent, if they need electricity to keep things going. That's what a special needs shelter is for.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but people do need to realize that we don't have enough cots for everyone, and it's still going to be crowded. You have a little bit more room. You can bring a couple people in your family, but don't bring the whole clan. Yeah. But the big thing is that they have generators, so they do have power. Right. And if you're depending on power, that's the place for you then, if you have no other option.
And folks that are transportation disadvantaged, they're also potentially eligible for special needs too, correct?
Right. And in Pinellas County, when you register for special needs, your information is sent to the fire department. If you need transportation assistance, the fire department will come get you and bring you to the shelter. Yeah.
Pasco County will be calling anybody who's registered as special needs to find out what their need is for that storm. Yeah. Each storm has different parameters and causes different needs within the community. So we want to make sure everybody is safe and taken care of.
Yeah, and I know that you all have a pretty comprehensive triage process, so that when that person is applying, it's just not a given that they're going to go to special needs. I mean, some professionals are really taking a look at what kind of needs that they're expressing, and they're going to try to meet them that way.
And that's why it's so important to register early. Yeah. It gives us time to go through it and do the triage, call if we have any questions. When we have people registering at the last minute, there really isn't time for that.
Right, and remember, registering helps us get the tools. If you're registering right as a storm is hitting, we haven't had that time to prepare and make sure that we have those resources that the individual might need.
Yeah, so if a person is registered on special needs and that's been certified, a storm is impending coming in that area, someone reaches out to them. Going back to the kits, we have two different types of kits we talk about. One where someone's going to keep it and they're going to stay at home with it. And then also if they need to evacuate, they're going to have a kit that goes. So that takes into consideration maybe a blow-up mattress, medications and everything else that they possibly would need during that time.
And they really need to have that all ready too, because they may get the call from the fire department an hour or two beforehand that they're going to come pick them up. Yeah. And if they have a pet, they need to have a kit for them ready as well.
Yeah. So we have about a minute left before the end of the first half of the show. The other population of seniors that we know that resides in the community, a lot of times they receive home health services. That could be a skilled care, it could be just help with homemaker, just to kind of keep their place in an order sometime. Should that resident understand the continuity plans for that home health provider and how they're going to receive that care?
Absolutely. It's all about having these communications early. You don't want to be finding out in the storm what the plan is. Talk about it soon. Talk about it early while you have time to adjust any type of plans that you might need. There might be a gap in what the capabilities are of that home provider that you might have to be or are responsible for handling on your own.
And for special needs shelters, we like the caregiver to come with them, and
Absolutely.
a professional healthcare provider can accompany them. And as a matter of fact, if they have a few clients, you can work with us and we'll put their clients in the same shelter so that they can be with all of them at one time.
That's a great bit of assistance.
Yes.
And going back to skilled nursing and also the assisted living facilities, don't wait for somebody to express their plans to you. Ask those good questions now.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, ladies, I really enjoyed having you in the first half of the show, and I'm assuming you're going to come back for the second half of the show.
We'll be here.
And we'll talk a lot more about senior preparedness. Please stay with us while we take a short break. As usual, don't forget to have a pen or pencil ready. During the break and at the end of our show, we'll be highlighting important information covering both Pasco and Pinellas County's disaster preparation resources. When we come back, we'll explore more senior preparedness ideas.
Many of us don't want to believe that elder abuse, neglect, or exploitation can happen to a family member, a friend, or even ourselves. Elder abuse is a growing problem and is severely underreported. Many victims are reluctant to report due to fear, embarrassment, shame, or guilt. In order to prevent elder abuse, we must take action. Don't be afraid to talk about the issue and report it to the Florida Abuse Hotline at 1-800-962-2873. Together, we can make a difference.
Welcome back to Aging on the Suncoast. During the first half of the show, Mary Burrell and Laura Wilcoxon helped us understand senior disaster preparation and sheltering options. So let's continue this conversation and talk about the other ways we can prepare. Mary, Laura, welcome back to Aging on the Suncoast.
Thank you.
So we covered a wealth of material during the first half of the show, and we have a little bit more that we want to cover to create a holistic view of how seniors can prepare for stuff. Why don't we start with medications? In our senior population, medications are an immense priority, and they needed to be accounted for when it comes to preparation. Mary, you want to expound a little bit on that?
Well, I think it's important to know that when a state of emergency is declared for our county, that people can go ahead and get refills on their prescriptions without having to wait, that the insurance usually makes you, that requirement. So that's good to know. Yeah. Also important to get a list of your medications and your dosage from your pharmacist, and you can get that every single time you go. So this way, if you need that, if somebody else needs to look at it, you have that information, and that's very important as well. And if you go to a shelter, a special needs shelter, make sure that you have it in a bag and have your name on it. And because you're in a shared situation, everybody puts it in the same refrigerator basically. So you need to have that labeled very well as well.
Yeah, and they should be seniors should be thinking about their medications if they're going to stay at home, or if they're going to go away, right?
Correct.
Oh, absolutely. You need your medication, and you really don't want to be running out of that. Because you rely on it.
Yeah.
In the first segment, we talked a lot about having a plan. Talk to your doctor, talk to your pharmacist about your medications and what the requirement for storage is on them. Talk to them about what their policy is for getting that extra refill before the storm happens, so that way you can be well prepared to get that extra refill should we be under a declaration.
Yeah, what a great piece of legislation that came through that law. I think it was back in 2004. And,
very important.
Yeah, and that emergency refill. And so many of our seniors in the community, like anyone else really, they have pets. They have cats, and they have dogs, and fish, and snakes, and whatever they find lovable. Do they need to be taking into consideration their pet preparedness?
Like you prepare your family, you prepare for your pet.
Right.
So you need to make sure that you have food and water out for your pet. And if you are planning on taking your pet to a pet shelter with you, the pet will end up being in a crate in a pet-friendly area, but you would be in the general pop. So you are not right there with your pet, but your pet would be in a safe location.
Good point. Is there a registration process that they would need to do that prior to?
Not in Pasco County. We welcome if you have a cat or a dog or miniature horse. we are welcoming your pet, but unfortunately reptiles and exotics are not allowed in the shelter.
Oh.
Now, in Pinellas County, we don't allow horses. we're dogs and cats.
We're dogs and cats only. Miniature horses are registered service animal.
Oh.
Well, a service animal is always allowed, you know, into a shelter, yeah. But you do have to have all their documentation too, their rabies shots and all of that. Microchip, good idea. Visit to your veterinarian early on, you know, talk to them about what they would need, and you know, making arrangements for them. If you have a parrot, you know, a pet-friendly shelter is not made for parrots, so you may know someone who can take care of them.
Yeah.
Right, and you are expected to stay with your pet at that shelter. It's not where you can just drop off your pet. You need to be there with them.
Well, that makes sense, and very similar to what we were talking about for those that are plagued with Alzheimer's disease or related disorder. If you're a caregiver of that person, you can't just drop them off at the special needs shelter. You have to stay there with them.
Correct.
And that supplements the limited staff that are able to take care of folks in these places. So it's just the right thing to do.
And if I could just clarify with the special needs shelters and the pets, people who go to special needs shelters cannot keep their pets there. All right, so they'll be brought, or they can drive to special needs shelters, and then Animal Services will take your pets, care for them during the storm, and then once you're allowed to return home, then they'll bring the pets home to you.
Oh.
So
Pasco County has a special needs shelter that's also pet friendly.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys are really helping the public plan for that in all aspects of it as well. Now, Laura touched base just a tad in the beginning of our show, and she was talking about the ways that people can prepare, and she talked about the hurricane guides, and Pinellas County obviously got guides as well. Do you want to talk just a little bit more about what they include and where they're offered and in what modality?
Okay, well, our all hazards preparedness guides are in public offices and libraries and online. And we try to just step you through the process, asking those questions, those easy questions really, but ones that you really should take the time to do. And we have a list in there of what you need to go, what you need to stay, what you need if you're evacuating, but plan on coming back home, you know, to spend that week afterwards. You have to leave stuff at home so that you can, you know, you have your tarp, your non-perishables, you know, you can come back and survive. So it has all the information in there, and it's just a good step-by-step guide. And then I tell people, with your important papers, put that guide in there, because there may be some things like FEMA assistance. We have some information there about that. Right now, you probably honestly aren't going to think about that too much. But afterwards, when you have damage,
you want it at your fingertips to where you can grab it.
Yeah, you want a good consolidated place to find all those important numbers. So you mentioned about coming back in, and that assumes that someone's going to leave and come back in. And I know that Pinellas County has an initiative going on right now, specifically for the barrier islands, to try to ease the coming back in. Would you talk to that a little bit?
Right. The Sheriff's Office has the emergency access for the barrier islands, and you need to go get a permit, and you can get that at your city halls or at the Sheriff's Office. Now, they'll let you back on if you don't have that, but you're going to have to sit in a really long line because they have to check your documentation, your ID, you know, and your proof of residence. So having this permit will make it a lot faster in and out.
Yeah, yeah, to avoid that long line or that frustration of getting back to your home on a barrier island, it just makes sense for somebody to take that little bit of time on the front end and get all those credentials worked out that time.
Oh yeah, and also re-entry into the county. If you evacuate out of the county, you're going to need some of that documentation to get back in, because, you know, if we have a catastrophic storm, we're not going to be letting just everybody back into the county.
No, we're
going to have to, you know, control that.
Yeah, Pinellas County is surrounded by bridges, so we only have so many thoroughfares that come through, except for 19, right?
Yeah, except for that one spot.
So another initiative that I know about that Pinellas County put up at least 1 or 2 years ago is when Sally Bishop was the former director, was the Storm Surge lookup.
Right, we call it the Storm Surge Protector app.
Okay.
But if you go on our website, you'll see a heading that says, will your home be underwater during a hurricane? And so it's really cool. You go ahead and, you know, look it up, you put in your address, and it shows you a depiction of the type of building that you've entered, so like a single-family home or a condo. And it'll show you your evacuation zone. And then you can click on the different zones or levels that would be called and see where the water would rise and what that would look like. So at my house, I'm a level A, so by B, my car is like this and it's floating. So we're hoping that if you don't think 11 foot is that high, when you look at where it's going to be on your house, we're hoping that you'll change your mind and leave when you're told to.
I've used that app myself. It's very helpful, and the illustration is it's scary in many ways. Now, Pasco is also in the 21st century. You guys have an app out there. It's Alert Pasco.
Alert Pasco is actually an area that you can register your contact information, and that will allow us to contact individuals that registered in a geographic area. So if we know that there's a hazard in this known area, we can go ahead and send out a message to anyone who has their information registered with us. But you can find that through the My Pasco app.
Okay.
The My Pasco app is county-wide information. It will be the fastest way for residents to be able to get information from us if they have those push notifications set up. Anytime that we have a storm coming or another hazard, our media department, they're fantastic, and they will be sending those messages out.
Yeah, you do have a good media department. I can say that with a whole lot of surety. The Pinellas also has an app. It's Ready Pinellas, is that what it is?
Right. And we also have similar Alert Pinellas that people can go sign up for emergency notifications. And Ready Pinellas, it's a mobile application downloaded to your phone or mobile device. And it really does all of the work for you. It has, or you can look up your evacuation zone. It has supply lists according to your needs, a personal plan. It even tells you what you should be doing 5 days out, 3 days out before a storm. It's very, very handy. Has pretty much everything you need right in one place.
That's great. And I know that during the break and at the end of the show, there'll be some graphics where people can actually see what that looks like prior to going onto websites and then to their smartphones, excuse me, and enrolling in those apps and using them for the tool that they are. We have roughly about a minute left, and we opened the show talking about Hurricane Irma and the potential devastation it could have caused on our area too. Any takeaway thoughts for people that made it through Hurricane Irma that were seniors, and what you learned real quick in about 20 seconds or so?
Every storm is different, so it's always important that you be prepared and you treat each storm with the caution that it can be the hazard that it is.
Yeah, and just that wasn't a real hurricane. It wasn't that strong, and we had a lot of problem with power, so just plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And also all the actions that they take at the beginning process for the planning will really lessen the struggles and the stress that they're going to have during the recovery process. Laura, we thank you so much for coming on the show and talking, expounding on such great topics that you know best. And Mary, thanks for coming on our show today.
Thank you.
We hope you learned a great deal from this month's broadcast. We also hope this episode helped you take this hurricane season as seriously as you should. At the end of the show, we'll show you some cool resources available to you, so get your pencil ready. We'll see you next month, and until then, please stay safe and utilize all the resources these two emergency management offices have offered you.
Many of us don't want to believe that elder abuse, neglect, or exploitation can happen to a family member, a friend, or even ourselves. Elder abuse is a growing problem and is severely underreported. Many victims are reluctant to report due to fear, embarrassment, shame, or guilt. In order to prevent elder abuse, we must take action. Don't be afraid to talk about the issue and report it to the Florida Abuse Hotline at 1-800-962-2873. Together, we can make a difference.